Da da da! What's my good chair? Let's give YouTube a few minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and each week we are picking a word, a powerful word, an impactful word, a word that I'm not quite sure of what we're going to be delving into at any moment and on any day because we delve into that word for the entire week. And it was funny because even before I got this word, I was already moving in that direction. So I found it very, very curious because I feel that push sometimes, moving me in the direction of the next lessons or the next adventures, the next experience, the next conversation, the next move, the next change in our life, right? And I'm a big believer in change. It takes making a choice, right? And when you make a choice, you automatically, even when you don't notice or you don't feel like you're putting that effort in, but the moment you make a choice, change comes into your life, right? And you have to ride those waves. You have to adapt and conquer quite often, especially if you're just, right, making these changes. You've made these choices for the first time. It is in that practice. And it's funny, I was just stalling there a little bit and I was just finishing up a video, an interview with Jordan Peterson, somebody I really appreciate. It is a roller coaster when you sit in on those discussions with him, but I think he, with intent, means to trigger, right? Means to get your emotions stirred because that's where we make these choices, right? We make our choices for the most part by our emotions, right? And it's in that moment where we let those emotions arise, that's when we can jump on the bandwagon with our minds and create the most magnificent whatever that we are dreaming of, because that's our 19th word this week is the word dream. And I was thinking today, what perspective would I come at it with, because I've been already in the word, but I'm taking the lessons myself, right? And so, in coming here fresh like a loaf of bread, sometimes it's in that we talked a little bit about yesterday about being naive, right? Not having a full understanding as to why we move into things, why we make these choices in our lives, right? And sometimes, right, especially being so new into these understandings, to these paths that I've chosen to move down, that I'm really grateful that I clung to that idea of baby steps, because I do believe I'm sitting here still, right? 10 years working in social media. In one form or another. And you can look at that as, oh my goodness, 10 years, right? And that's where she is. But you know what? It is in those failures. And I was saying, I was listening to Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about being aware of your mistakes, that your mistakes matter, right? I'm with the entrepreneurs, and yes, mistakes matter. You want to make the least amount of mistakes as you move forward, as you possibly can. But you have to allow yourself, right? Don't intently go and mess things up. You don't go in that blue ribbon race and purposely, right, trip over yourself or right, dilly dally as everybody passes you. No, you stay in that game, right? You stay there. But for me, it's really important that when I dream, when I set my goals, that I have to be motivated towards it, right? Whether it's a reward, an actual reward, or it's going to be something that I'm going to be able to use later on, that maybe in this moment it's not rewarding me, but that information, that insight, that understanding becomes a tool. And you never know that, I could walk down that street and that information that I just got now could be so relevant and so pertinent to maybe somebody's very life. You never know what it is, even if I'm yanking somebody's back on somebody's collar as they're crossing a sidewalk because they almost got hit by a car. But right? That sometimes is the lesson in overcoming yourself, because lots of times we sit back as spectators, right? Call it students, but lots of times it's spectators because we're too afraid to make those steps, to make those moves. And I'm a true believer that somebody has to be first. Somebody has to be first. And in coming to the table with, right, not a lot of lessons, but a lot of experiences, and right, doing that pedaling, right, trying to make up for lost time, those lost potentials in my choice, in choices, in those dreams that I, right, as Cindy, who now looking back at her choices, looking at some of those dreams for herself, some of those dreams that had to be realized because I dreamed them, I wished them, I desired them, right? And lots of times when these dreams are realized, you come to realize that, oh, right, this wasn't really what I was looking for. Like when I went in September and, my dream vehicle, the Jeep, I really wanted the Jeep for myself. And I rented one for my trip this past summer as an experience of how it would feel for me to own this vehicle, to come to realize that for what I would want to use that vehicle for, right? It wouldn't quite suit me, right? It wasn't my dream vehicle after all. Not that it wasn't an amazing vehicle. It was an amazing vehicle, but I'm a back roads girl. I'm going to be car camping. I'm going to right? Maybe you never know. I might be living in my vehicle, right? We live in crazy town days in this moment. But to get back to that, right? In my dreams, I test the waters, and in my dreams, I've had dreams that needed to be realized because I dreamed them, right? And sometimes we are lucky enough to have these experiences with these things that we dream, to realize that, ooh, we could have dreamed bigger, or, right, I was dreaming too small there, or, wow, it's not really my thing, is it? So, getting back to this conversation with Jordan Peterson here, where he's saying, right, your mistakes count. But as somebody moving forward, as somebody that's trying out new waters, right, purposely pushing themselves into experiences they might not be comfortable, that I might not be comfortable with, that we should be allowed to give ourselves these opportunities to do it baby steps, so that we can, right, really have an appreciation as to whether or not something is truly our dream, right? If it's truly our dream, because then we'll just start to love the process. And in that baby steps, once you start loving it, right? It's like the snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, just like my passions now for actually wanting to understand the feelings and emotions of humans, right? Understanding that we can be our own worst enemies. And you could say, well, Cindy, what kind of dream is that? Right? The Jeep sounded so much better than, right? Getting that whip out and showing up fresh like a loaf of bread every day and delving into those heavy topics that sometimes, right? They do. But that's why I have my job that puts the roof over my head so that I can ground myself in other interests and in other movement, right? Because it is movement. It's a place where I practice my craft, right? That I could actually make an impact in people's lives that might not have an opportunity, right? To sit here like I am and be seen and be heard, right? And they might go their entire lives. I could have gone through my entire lives insignificant. Take my first breath, right? Take my last breath, and nothing in between ever mattering, right? Ever making an impact, not even on myself. So my dream, right, is tied up. We were talked about this yesterday. My dreams are tied up with that goal setting because, right, I want to try out new things, right? This brand has been around for 10 years, but in that time, my brand has changed and pivoted just as many times. And you could go into my main channel and take a look at my content. I've got everything except the kitchen sink in there, but it's all nicely, I'm not saying nicely packaged, but a nicely amalgamated. It goes well together. It was meant to go well together. And that was not the plan, right? When you look at my main channel, that was not the plan. But in the lessons, and whether it was the lessons in brand building, right? Whether it was in those creative lessons that I was getting through YouTube, whether it was those technical, right? What was that? I better Google this and find out how to do this, or what this information is, or this equipment that I need. All of that were lessons. And I failed tons, tons in those lessons, right? And I am not afraid to fall flat on my face. And it's very disconcerting, right? Because I move forward by making choices, knowing that my choices are going to promote change, and then I'll have to ride those waves. And because I never give up, right? And because I know that reward will be there, and not just be there for me, but possibly because I show up fresh like a loaf of bread, it might be something that I might be able to share out there that might help somebody else out, right? And because of this understanding that somebody's got to take those first steps, right? And those first steps are messy, but those first steps sometimes are scary. And when we have people saying, right, those mistakes, those fails, they matter, right? And it makes it so we don't want to even try, because, right, we don't want to have anybody see us make those mistakes, right? To make us feel like we're foolish or not good enough when we are trying, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be um, here being seen and being heard, right? There are things out there that are less painful, but at the same time, there's so many gifts in that, right? And one of the greatest, well, I think for myself, right? Because it's hard sometimes, right? I could be off doing different things. I don't have to. I understand. I could just come to the table as I am and just go about living my life and taking in the lessons in my own quiet, comfortable, safe space. But I have a dream, and that dream is not realized in this moment, but maybe it is just in making those choices and letting the change come about and allowing me to test those waters and make those little fails and feel or allow myself to feel naive, allow myself to feel like the not the smartest person in the room, right? I can't do this genuinely, right? If I did come to the table pretending, right? Because that would be acting, and when we know that people make their movement by seeing that of evidence in the people that they're right they're following, that they're inspired by, right? He could do it, maybe I can too. Look what she's doing, right? Look at how she shows up fresh like a loaf of bread. Look at that silly girl, right? Bumbling her way along. But that's what I'm doing. I'm bumbling my way along, just like everybody else in this world is. And I am consistently bringing change into my life. Maybe there's some aspects, and I was going to talk about that a little bit today, was about those choices and those dreams that we have that got squashed along the way. Everybody stick your hands up, because it is in our choices. Even if it's in our choices to back down or to listen to somebody else's ideas of what we can or can't do, that after a while we pick up that baton ourselves, and right, and we listen to ourselves, right? Saying, oh, you can do that, or I don't think you can do that. What makes you think that, right? And so in our baby steps, right, it encourages us because we're always moving when we're doing the baby steps. And then when we feel that we're comfortable, we're practiced a little bit, we're not so shy in that, right? We just don't lay back and say, hey, we got it now, right? It's time for a choice. It's time for a goal. It's time for possibly a new dream, but possibly just needing to expand on the dream that you have. But you won't know unless you try, right? And in trying, I show up here fresh like a loaf of bread, not knowing what each moment is going to bring, right? From one moment to the next. And I have to be okay with putting my foot in my mouth. I gotta be okay at being the person that's not the smartest person in the room, right? And I have to dream bigger, because that's the message that keeps coming in this week, is that I'm just not dreaming big enough. And I think that I'm dreaming big because I'm tying what I'm dreaming for along with those dreams, those simple dreams, those comfortable dreams, those safe dreams that maybe I missed out on, right? At some point in my life. And there's a little bit of push and pull there as to, right, what gets the stage in the moment. But I think it's in that amalgamation, it's in that assimilation, and it's a little bit of that give and take, right? With consideration, right? To ourselves, knowing that we can make a choice and we can move towards that. But if I fail in that, or something blows up in my face, it'll be in my choices in how to take it, right? It's going to be in my choices what to dream next. And I think, right? Sometimes we are put in that holding pin, right? Or you could call it playpen, right? That's actually a better terminology for it, is that playpen. So we can try out different things so that we can socially interact with people that are different from us, have different conversations, different adventures, different scenery, right? That we can actually feel our ways around a little bit better so that we can, right, really see what our dreams might or might not be, because sometimes those dreams are only for the dream for the moment, right? Just like that Jeep. It was a moment. It was a couple of years actually. I dreamed and was manifesting that Jeep. I did manifest it. It had to be realized. It had to be realized. But I'm grateful in that realization that I got to realize it might not have been my dream after all. Okay, you guys. That's my good chair. And we'll see each other tomorrow. Bye bye.